Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
Request recognition and address the Planning Commission. 3-minute time limits may be placed on citizen comments. All right, number 4, changes to the agenda. Are there any changes?
There are no changes.
Okay. Item number 5, consent. We need to approve the minutes from June 28th. Did everyone look those over? Any typos or errors or things to correct?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All the ayes? On the nays? Minutes approved. Item number 6, public hearing. Hold a public hearing and recommend the City Council approve the proposed noise ordinance and add in title 19.070 to the City of Marysville Municipal Code is item number 1.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Pease, a planning consultant to the city. Tonight, I'm going to be bringing forth a proposed noise ordinance for the Planning Commission to consider. I understand we're having technical difficulty and can't play the PowerPoint. I understand the Commission has hard copies of it. I'll go ahead and give the presentation, and if you could follow along, that would be great.
The colorful one that was in the back, correct?
Yes,
okay.
It should say noise ordinance. You may be able to see it on this on your individual screen. Oh, there it is. I guess it just can't be recorded. Go to the first slide. Great. Okay. Second slide. So the City Council recently directed staff to draft a noise ordinance because the city currently does not have a noise standard or an adopted noise ordinance. A noise ordinance would allow the city to set a standard for new development, and it would assist the city in environmental review as projects come forward. Noise can be characterized as loud, unpleasant, or irritating sound that may interfere with the ability to conduct certain activities. Next slide. This is maybe hard to see, but it just shows some common construction equipment to show how loud those equipment can get. So sound is expressed in decibels to determine how loud an activity or existing condition is. Generally, a 3 decibel change can be noticed by the human ear. A 10 decibel change would be perceived as a doubling of the noise level. However, the noise scale is logarithmic, so that when the sound level is doubled, it increases by 3 decibel regarding the sound level. So as shown here, 60 dB is typically, can be normal transportation noise, 50 from a roadway. So if you added another 60 dB or a doubling of that traffic, it would be an example. So individual jurisdictions often establish sound limits based on the day-night average, or LDN, which describes noise in a 24-hour period with a 10 decibel penalty for sound levels at night that may be disturbing to more sensitive types of uses. So slide 9. It is interesting to note that Caltrans noise standard is quite high. They've established an 86 dBA at 50 feet from the job site for activities between 9 and 6. However, next slide. The state of California at the same time has shown that noise levels are generally acceptable in the 50 to 60 range, conditionally acceptable in the 55 to 70 decibel range, normally unacceptable in the 70 to 75 range, and then they state it's clearly unacceptable in the 85 decibel range. So we are proposing a new municipal code, chapter 9.070, which would add a noise ordinance to the city to regulate highway traffic and construction noise as it relates to noise sensitive uses. We would establish 65 LDN for the exterior noise and 45 LDN for interior noise. 45 interior noise is the state standard as well. So projects that exceed the standard would be required to provide mitigation. So if a new development came in, we would do a noise analysis to determine what the noise levels are. And then depending on the type of project, we would look for mitigation if it exceeds that standard. So mitigation could be sound walls or berming. It depends on the site. So we would look at that. This is hard to see, but it should be in your packet. And it shows typical noise standards for residential, theaters, office buildings, industrial, and things like that. Next slide. So with this, we're asking the Planning Commission to hold a public hearing to consider this noise ordinance and make a recommendation to the City Council to approve this new ordinance and add a new title to the City of Marysville's Municipal Code.
Thank you very much. I guess I have a couple questions. Why now? What's prompting this as of now? Is something pushed for this other than just the fact that we're redoing the general plan, or?
Well, that's a good point. Also with the general plan, we will have a new what's called noise element that also will have high policy noise levels. But because we don't have anything right now, as projects come in, particularly projects that we're reviewing from other agencies, we don't have the ability to say, hey, wait, you shouldn't be proposing this, or it's impacting the city of Marysville. So if we have a standard when new projects come in, like a transportation project, we can point to our standard and say, your environmental document should review it in the context of Marysville.
The only thing that I go back to is just basically everything that we've been talking about for the last 6 months, which is just opening up for businesses and trying not to be the stick in the mud here. And then we're going to go put something ahead of them that's even worse than asking for a parking. You know what I mean? It's almost just putting another leap in front of the developers that I didn't know why this was coming up now. I'm not necessarily against it. I don't know why it's needed, I guess, as of now.
These are standards that are pretty standard across the state. We looked at Fresno's, which modeled this ordinance. We looked at surrounding jurisdictions and the counties around here, and everyone has a 65 dB standard for roadway noise. And so I don't think that this ordinance would be an impact on residential or commercial. Actually, any new project that came in, if it was large enough, it would need environmental review, and we would ask them to meet the standard. This just helps protect the city from other projects that could impact the city that we.
So it would already be done for, say, the B Street project that is a possibility for coming in or something like that.
Correct.
It would already be done for that anyway.
Correct.
Okay.
Let's take a look at the existing construction businesses we already have in the city. I do know that on high temperature days, the earlier you start so we can get work done.
Mm-hmm.
And let's go out to roofers and construction. If this does go and somebody is not happy, it's going to shut down a lot of, and I'm specifically thinking of one that's downtown over by 1st Street, 2nd Street area. If somebody complains about it, they're going to be shutting down a lot of money.
So actually, the city already has a nuisance provision in the municipal code for things like that. So this wouldn't change that section of the code at all.
Okay.
So there is a provision for this. This would be setting the standard. Do you know if those construction activities occur before 7 a.m.?
Mm-hmm. When it's warm.
So what time would they typically?
It depends if, well, during the summer months, if that company has a big job, it's 5 to 6. But 6 o'clock would be a normal in the heat. 7 o'clock is normal for winter, spring hours.
Yeah.
How would this, or who would be responsible for enforcing this? Would it be complaint driven primarily, I would assume?
It would be complaint driven. We are identifying either the chief development director or their as.
So would it apply to some guy has a backyard home project, construction project that this would still?
No, this would exempt certain things. Normal air conditioning, garbage pickup, emergency or utility repairs are exempted. Normal school, parks. I even called out Bryant Field that they'd be exempt. So, we're really looking at transportation.
Not illegal fireworks.
Yeah. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but some of this was driven by our discussions with Caltrans. Just to be perfectly frank, we in their project at Vinnie Junction, we were very concerned about noise, and we did discover that we don't have our own ordinance. So this allows us to somewhat protect the city. Project were to come in that increase the noise levels of transportation noise to an unacceptable level for our community. I think it also, correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy, it also says when we develop a particular use that we need to look at that use, make sure it's conducive with existing noise levels. So right. Say we're going to put in a housing project, probably don't want to put that in next to a factory without some type of mitigation, not on the existing factories part, but on the developments part. So it's kind of a two-way street. We don't want a new project affecting noise-wise what's already there.
And I think in the Caltrans example, what happened is they have an 85 decibels. And because we didn't have a standard, they called that less than significant, and they were off the hook from having to do any impacts, even though.
And is that out Highway 70? Is that where that was?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we want to prevent that in the future for any of those type projects. And it may not necessarily just be a Caltrans project.
Sure.
It could be a county project or a private project that just by virtue of their operation creates excessive noise.
Just out of curiosity, were there any complaints from that construction that was going on Highway 70?
This is for a project that hasn't been started yet.
Oh, that's okay. I got what you're saying.
And so there's two components to the noise generated from a project like that. There's the construction noise during the period of construction that you would expect to be potentially at a higher level, but temporary. And then there's the ongoing noise generated by the additional traffic throughput that we'd be concerned about. And frankly, I'm more concerned about the ongoing traffic noise that would be generated. And Ellis Lake is a good example. City's interest is to make that a peaceful environment. Caltrans interest, it may not be the same interest as, so we want to protect our interest through a noise.
And we're going to be able to hold other government agencies to our ordinance.
So we don't hold them to our ordinance, but when they do a CEQA analysis, they have to address consistency with local plans and policies. And that provision, if we had an ordinance or standard, then they would have to analyze it from that perspective. So we can't force them to meet our standard, but this does give us the ability to review and comment from a CEQA perspective.
Anyone else have any comments? I guess just personally with me, it's just, I hope it's not doing more harm than it's doing good, because more red tape just stands in front of more growth. So it's just another reason why, I don't know, even myself building an office in Marysville, now I have to do a noise analysis to build that office.
Actually, that's a great example. Okay. So if you were to build a office on a regular parcel, we would look at that. And if it's consistent with the zoning, consistent height and everything, that typically wouldn't trigger an environmental impact report, and that would not require a noise analysis. What would be a larger project, something that was several city blocks probably in size, and a new use, something that wasn't contemplated in our zoning ordinance or our general plan, that change in use, that would trigger a noise analysis. That helps.
Or if you're trying to blow up the ground with dynamite, maybe
to dredge the lake possibly, or yeah, so I guess that would be my only concern, is just that it's doing more harm than it's doing good. But I see the point that drives it at this point. That makes sense as of now.
And with our general plan and our specific plan, what we're hoping to do, and I've talked about this before, is the specific plan. We're hoping to streamline development by looking at that and having an environmental impact report that looks at infill development in the downtown, that additional studies and things needed if someone comes in.
So what are you asking out of the Planning Commission today with this topic? Just another discussion, almost like the previous, or
no? This is an actual public hearing, so we would want a formal recommendation to the City Council to adopt the noise ordinance.
Or not to? Is that the one way or the other?
Exactly.
So as it's written, whether to adopt it or not.
Right. Okay. Correct. And you can recommend changes or, yeah.
I'd like to get one clarification on 9.0740, item E. Can you clarify what that part of it is, like for the motor vehicles and all that stuff?
Can you repeat the number?
E, the conflicts with noise sensitive users on section 40.
Thank you. You have a specific question on that?
I'm just trying to get an understanding of, because it has a lot of stuff about, vehicles, motorcycles. Like, I don't see that as part of construction, or is this more of the traffic part of it?
This is relating to things that could make noise on the transportation system.
So could a police officer pull over somebody for being too loud, driving their vehicle? Is that what we're saying here? I don't.
And that's already a thing also. You can get an excessive noise violation.
Yeah,
but I thought we didn't have a noise ordinance.
So we have a separate section for nuisance that you're.
So that's separate then. Okay.
Yeah. So this is an example where we're asking equipment to meet the new noise standard.
Okay.
So when you're looking at, say, a motorcycle or an automobile that's exceeding that noise standard of like a 65. So how's that measured? I mean,
so that is measured 50 feet from the center line of the roadway
for a certain number of minutes. Because if it's just passing by, you
Yeah,
need to have the cops pull over and go, hey, you're being excessive, even though it affected this person for a second.
actually, that's a great question because our intent is to have it be an average noise. LDN is an average. So I didn't include a single event noise, which we typically don't measure or correct.
Going back to the construction, would a homeowner be able to call the police and shut the construction down at any time?
Right now, if it's deemed a nuisance, they could call the police right now and say, this is a nuisance. I live next to this construction site and it's driven. That exists right now. This would modify that the hours of operation. Typically it's 7 a.m. For hours of operation for construction. So that's a good question. If you're concerned, you can make a recommendation to the city council that noise be allowed that early in the morning.
But then that kind of changes everything that your whole objective, I guess. We were to try to say, well, it doesn't count for construction.
So first, and I'm just going to say this. First of all, this is not an ordinance that has to be rushed through. There's no emergency to this. So I'm not concerned if we need to deliberate more and bring it back. I do want to make sure we're addressing all of the items you bring up. As an example, the construction noise. We have a manufacturer in the downtown area that's been there for a significant period of time. Frankly, I haven't heard complaints in the 3 years I've been here, roughly. I think what we're more concerned about is, we're talking about construction, is construction of a project that is disturbing the rest of the community. And as an example, if they were constructing at 12 p.m. at night and using jackhammers, that would be problematic, and we want to enforce against that. Now, in that case, we may send the police out there and shut them down, or we wait till the next day and talk to somebody that can have that conversation. So generally speaking, we don't allow construction until after 7 o'clock. And I think that's pretty common for most communities. When we're talking about the manufacturing, that to me it really needs to be controlled through our zoning and land use requirements. I mean, we don't, or we wait till the next day and talk to somebody that can have that conversation. So generally speaking, we don't allow construction until after 7 o'clock, and I think that's pretty common for most communities. When we're talking about the manufacturing, that to me it really needs to be controlled through our zoning and land use requirements. I mean, we don't want to, as an example, set an outdoor amphitheater next to a church without looking at it environmentally, noise-wise, and seeing whether that's a proper use and whether there needs to be mitigation.
But with the current setup right now, we already would be taking that into consideration and doing that. And I totally understand where this is driven from, and I see the exact nail that you're trying to hit with it. But I'm worried that it's going to hit a lot of nails that are already existing, and it's going to be just a little too invasive. Is there a way to cater it towards transportation-driven construction instead of roadway construction, something that it is pointed at that directly instead of just a wide city ordinance that's going to affect more things than we're trying to affect?
It is supposed to be transportation.
But with a very blanketed vocabulary, correct?
Yeah, and I think I just heard something important, the distinction of manufacturing or existing businesses. I would characterize manufacturing and ongoing operations as not subject to this. You're already been approved. It should follow under what it's approved for, so it wouldn't be suddenly we're going to go out with noise monitors going, oh, you're above this. It really is supposed to be for transportation, construction sources, and when we're talking about construction, we're talking about new projects, bring in bulldozers, equipment, that type of thing.
And the only ones we can't regulate are the ones that are in question that we're talking about. But everything else would already come in ahead of the city, and we'd already be able to hold it to a different noise ordinance that we wanted to, but we just can't with the one that we're talking about, correct?
Yeah, and I think this helps set the bar for
Okay.
big projects going forward within the city as well. We want to protect our residents and businesses as well, so it goes both ways. We want to make sure that we have a standard so that if something comes in, folks have a level playing field. Developers know the standard that they our residents have assurances that we're not going to put some new use next to them that's really noisy.
For sure. I keep thinking about it kind of the same way that she's speaking of, and if you don't like the noise in that area, you moved into the wrong area because
Right.
they've been there for
Right, exactly.
150 years.
Well,
so it's
Yeah.
maybe you moved into the wrong location.
I want to avoid that because, I've seen instances where a noise generator was occupying the land first and a community built around it, and suddenly the people that were there first had to move.
I've seen racetracks, exactly.
That's
that
my
situation.
big example. Yeah. And I don't want to, we probably won't have that problem here based on our geography, but I want to avoid that type of situation too. So particularly in the manufacturing, we, not on noise, but we've had people that have purchased residences in commercial zoning and are upset because other commercial is being built around them, but that's what they bought. And so that's what they have to live with. My main concern is we start putting some limits on those primarily agency projects that might cause issues with our residents from a noise perspective, whether that's during construction or ongoing after they've built the project. We can certainly work to try and tailor it.
Yeah,
more.
so on page 3 down at the bottom are really the two things that I was trying to accomplish with this. It's number C, transportation noise sources should not exceed 65 LDN when measured 50 feet from a noise sensitive, and construction related noise near noise. And that means construction work related activity. Again, maybe I need to add something, a definition that manufacturing and ongoing operations or within the city are not subject to this.
Agree. And I know most of these aren't always the funnest read anyway, but it's 9 pages and 2
Yeah.
lines are exactly what we're trying to poke
Yeah,
at.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's I personally, I'm with you. I would love to read it a little bit more and see this a little more thoroughly looked at than vote to recommend approval or denial today. I don't know.
I can tell you
what guys
too
feel.
that even beyond the ordinance, noise is a very technical matter,
Yes.
and how you measure it is very technical. And I've seen cases where even with all of the technical equipment, noise problems are often hard to solve. So this is really just getting an ordinance in place is the first step in dealing with it. And then I think once we have that in place, when that first project comes about, then there's going to be a whole nother round on how to mitigate, how to enforce all that stuff.
I'm thinking of one specific circumstance in mind, and Stassi's in Marysville here. Somebody bought the apartment above next to it, and they now weren't allowed to conduct business the way that they had been conducting business for 50 years. So I would just hate for something like this to go in and cause a business like Stassi's or something else in town to not be able to conduct business the way that they've been doing it for years, because now we have a decibel limit that they are clearly over, that they've been doing for years past a certain time limit, and now they're not allowed to. So I need to read a lot. Okay, a lot of good reading.
I do have one other to piggyback off of Commissioner Langsdorf's question regarding the time. On that item D, with the construction-related noise, you had the times there. Is there a way we can put down, to where we can, it's at the discretion of the city, whether they can start at 6:30, because I think now OSHA, you have to shut down at 100 degrees. So once it reaches that, now they've lost all
I think we could, and frankly, we already do that when they're asking for a encroachment permit. I'm not sure about building permits, but definitely encroachment permits, we've done that. In fact, the courthouse right across was doing a roof, and the judges didn't want to disturb the court during the day, so they wanted to do the roof at night. Yeah. And my concern was, what about all the residents that might be affected by the noise? But we worked through that, and they weren't generating a lot of noise at night. But we did put that on the encroachment permit, that this is the hours of operation you need to work in. And I think we could do that if we aren't already doing that with building permits.
That is correct. We also, just as for the courthouse, they had just a couple specific dates where they asked to start just a little bit earlier, and those specific dates were put into the.
But it was a condition that we controlled some. We worked with them, but came up with a reasonable solution.
It'd be nice to have that in the ordinance to where, so somebody can't come back and go, no, your ordinance says 7 to 7.
Yeah.
Where's that discretion for the city?
Any other comments or thoughts?
Like you said, you've already, permitted the one large construction company that we're kind of referring to as that, they're grandfathered in. I think we already approved them. They just built a new section. I mean, I just think that those kind of things, I don't know how you add that language here, but something like that says something about that, because, they've been here, them, and they measure doors. I mean, I know the type of noise, but yeah, but something in there that, we've already approved their plan. We've already knew the land use, and what's surrounding them. So I think they should be something specific like that.
So what I'm hearing is you'd like to this, and I'll make some tweaks based on what I heard, including existing operations, defining manufacturing and that are ongoing and uses that are grandfathered in, and then add at the discretion of the city for hours of operation for certain construction-related activities, and then that. This and then
I believe that would be a good idea. Yeah, just let us wrap. To me, this is almost as big a conversation as parking, and we've had we've had 3 months to look at that.
Yeah,
So
true,
it's,
true.
I
Yeah.
don't want to overact and throw this at the city and have it be a barrier to stop cars and now people can't walk past it.
Yeah.
It's another.
So I think do they need a motion and a motion and second and vote to continue?
Yes, and in order for us not to have to renotice, I think date certain, so to the next meeting or the meeting. Prefer that way.
Want to have a motion for that, or do I?
Anyway.
Either way.
Yeah, motion to table it and continue to another further
At the next meeting?
Yeah.
The next meeting would be August 23rd.
Or let's go next available meeting in case.
Does that
we
give
don't
you
have one.
Next meeting
sufficient
we have a
time?
quorum. Yeah.
Does that give you sufficient time?
Yes, I believe so.
I second the motion. Everyone for the motion? Ayes?
Aye.
Against it? The ayes have it. Okay. On to public hearing item B, hold a public hearing and provide a recommendation to the city council to adopt an ordinance approving a zoning code amendment to chapter 18 of the zoning code relating to off-street parking in the C2 and C3 zoning districts. I believe this is a continuation of the last couple meetings, correct?
That's correct. Again, good evening. I'm Kathy Pease. I'm here this evening to hold that public hearing on a recommendation to the City Council to amend requirements for parking in the downtown C2 commercial and C3 commercial zoning districts. So we don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but as you are aware, this item has been before the Planning Commission twice in a public workshop format. At the last meeting, there was a general discussion regarding exempting residential development from parking standards, as well as a concern regarding exempting all parking. Tonight, you have two alternatives to consider. One is the original proposal to exempt parking in the downtown, and a proposal that was brought forward by Commissioner Bramer, which would change the standard to 0.5 spaces per residential hotel and motel uses. Off-street parking requirements for buildings less than 10 units would not be needed if the existing building fully covers the site. For more than 10 units, parking analysis would be required if the proposal could not meet on-site standards. Hotel and motel uses. The analysis. Off-street parking requirements for buildings less than 10 units would not be needed if the existing building fully covers the site. For more than 10 units, parking analysis would be required if the proposal could not meet on-site standards. The analysis would be forwarded to the Planning Commission for review and recommendation, and a residential parking permit program may be required. So at this point, questions? That concludes my presentation.
Still, but at a level of 0.5 per, was that per unit? Is that what that was?
It's, yeah, half a parking space per unit.
Okay. So again, a 15-unit complex would need 7 spaces on site, or be approved to not need any through the planning commission.
One thing I don't see in these alternatives is we discussed numerous times that we were going to ask that, that it comes back in 5 years, whatever we decided, however, whatever that was, so that we.
Yeah,
so
that could be.
That needs to be added somewhere.
I guess to either one, I think is what we had said originally, correct? Whether we get rid of it altogether or put a 0.5 on it, we definitely want to look at it. And I think we said 3 to 5 years or something. 3 years?
So 3 years, staff had a concern with, because if we had a residential project come in today, it's unlikely that we would be able to process it and they would get their infrastructure in and have it constructed within 3 years. So we're not sure that 3 years is a very meaningful benchmark for you to see how this is working. So we would recommend a longer time frame. But that said, any time frame that we pick, we can always come back at any time.
I think when I was thinking about the 5-year, coming back in 5-year and put that in an ordinance is kind of hard because you'll have to go effective, say, June 27th, 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Now, is it every 5 years after that? Constantly, it would be every 5 years.
I guess so. I would say the first one is just 5 years, and then we'd have to say revisit another 5 at that time if we wanted to.
Yeah, but in your ordinance, it would be
Revisit every 5 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was staff's concern as well. I think from staff looking at it, again, it could be brought back next year if you don't like it. You know, it's the purview of the planning commission to always say, hey, you know, we approved this, we would like staff to look at it again.
I guess if we're not all here in 5 years and it gets brought up ahead of them, it doesn't mean that they have to choose to do anything different than what it is anyway. So it doesn't force their hand at all.
Well,
And we can look at it next year or 3 years from now or 5 years from now anyway.
And you're more determined on staff bringing it in front of us because, you know, we got other things going. It probably,
Yeah.
in 3 years, 5 years comes pretty quick.
Yeah.
And then in another further presentation, something else will come out too, or you'll kind of go, okay.
Or just use a date, July 1st of 5 years from now. Beginning of your fiscal year, whatever.
I guess that would, at bare minimum, bring the topic back up and force staff to go back through and reanalyze exactly what we did and what it did to the community. So I guess it still would be a worthwhile thing to do. Even if you wanted to go 7 to 10 years, you could still do it and it would still be worthwhile. I get your concern about 3 years not being far enough out, because projects that we approve right now won't be through by then, but 2 years from now, a project, if we said 5 years, 2 years from now, a project won't be through
Right.
by then either. So I'd feel comfortable with 7 or 10, because again, chances of it being anyone from here is going to be very slim. It's just going to bring it back up for the conversation later.
Yeah, so maybe a specific date.
Yeah.
You know, July 1st of whatever, 7 years from now. Whatever we agree to.
What do you guys think? Just more so getting staff to have that prepared for them to take a look at it instead of just kind of forgetting about it. Like, I mean, we wouldn't have thought about this specifically had it not been brought before us.
It would have to be like on a, I don't know, routine basis or something like that.
Sorry. We are continuing to talk and be concerned about putting a date in the municipal ordinance. I'm wondering if there's a way to make a recommendation that's not part of the ordinance, but part of the recommendation of the council. So we have the ordinance and put in the planning commission requesting that this item come back at X.
That would be fine with me. Keeping them separate, basically, is what
Yeah.
that would be fine.
You usually don't put that type of date for staff to come back in an ordinance. It's either this is the way it is or not. The challenge is always, the longer it goes, is who remembers, who looks at whatever vehicle it is that says come back.
Yeah.
So if you tie it to the ordinance, then, or put it in the ordinance, question I would have is, okay, if staff doesn't bring it back and none of us are here, what is the regulation at that point?
Oh, yes.
Does it revert or does it make? So that's probably why you just say we want staff to come back separately.
And as Commissioner Kroger said last month, I would assume we're not going to nail it on the head anyway, and it'll probably be revisited before a 10-year mark anyway. So
we will likely get feedback if it's not acceptable. That would cause it to come back, and that's probably going to happen within 3 years. there are no complaints at that point, or minimal complaints, probably a done deal until,
So it's either going to get forgotten or be a problem, and then we'll have to revisit.
I mean, we hope it's a problem. That would mean that downtown
Yeah,
is booming
thriving.
and we have a parking issue, is what we would all hope, correct? Is there any more conversation on this, or do we just need to vote on a direction that we want to go, or how is this?
Well, I had a couple things. One, is disabled parking addressed in this? If we were to take alternate number one, if there's a resident who is disabled,
So,
could a space be set aside for them on the street?
yes, and actually, that's a very good question. This regulates the zoning requirement. It does not impact the building code requirements, which are required, ADA required through the building.
So if they put a fourplex on D Street, they would have to prove that there is
Yeah.
accessible handicap parking for
Exactly.
that. So it's kind of already in there anyway.
I am no expert, but I think the number of handicap for disabled stalls is dependent upon how many parking spaces are provided or how many units.
By how many, so it's, the building code is separate from the zoning code.
So,
Do you know what it is for building code?
It typically, it's based on the occupancy, so I don't know offhand.
I doubt, and I may be wrong, but I doubt if a 4-unit complex would require a handicap parking stall for 4 units. I think the number's higher.
And I would assume that if it's on D Street in Marysville, when they're all upstairs apartments without ADA access anyway, most of them, that it wouldn't be the case that we would have somebody in need.
I can give you an example of a project I just worked on. It was a special events facility for 150 guests, and it required 2.
Okay.
So-
Okay. Yeah. Any other-
Yeah, piggyback off of Commissioner's question, but first, the central business district, what's that defined? Like, what's that?
That is the downtown area. I guess, between 9, go ahead, Chris.
It runs from 9th Street to 1st Street, from East Street to A Street,
Looking at that whole area,
that whole area, correct?
about parking.
As a
Or
potential, yes.
Can you repeat that again, where it extends from?
So it
into?
starts at 9th, so think Lake Ellis,
Okay.
all the way down to the levee,
Okay,
and then think East Street, which is the state highway,
okay.
all the way east.
So it's just not just D Street, basically?
No, it's
You're
not
looking
just
at
D
that
Street.
whole area. Okay, so that brings me up to the question with the handicap parking. I'm looking at it more, I know that there's things about developers coming in and not liking what we have now, but it's developers here, they develop and then they're gone. We have to take the issues with the residents, the taxpayers. That's where the complaints are gonna come in. So if I have a residence and I'm handicapped, I don't have that spot dedicated for me. Another person, handicapped person, can come in, park there. That handicapped person that owns that house, that's living at that house, has to now travel blocks to his or her apartment or whatever it's called. So that's one of the concerns that I have
On that-
on the handicap.
On that, we do have a residential parking permit program already in place in the city. So there is a mechanism for new residential in that situation to get a parking permit that allows them approximate.
But we all love our parking spots in front of our house.
Yes,
And
we
if
do.
someone takes it, we're upset.
Yes,
And
yes.
that's, I can see this, and you're gonna get phone
Yeah.
calls going, hey, I have somebody in my parking spot, I have a permit, but I'm walking or wheelchairing or on crutches on 5 blocks away. So that's a concern that I have. Another concern is that it looks like we have something going on downtown over the weekend. So the streets are going to be blocked off. So if my parking spot that I usually have is now going to be blocked off to where I can't access my home all day long via Peach Festival. Day after, for over the weekend, now I have to travel blocks away just to get to my house every night or during the day. So, I'm looking again at the residential, the person that's going to complain, be there for a long-term period. And once it gets out that city doesn't have parking for you, now you're going to start losing residences because they don't want to live there because there's no parking. And you'll have those sort of situations. And then with street cleaning, what are we going to do with street cleaning during the day? Are we going to take out parking? You're not supposed to park there from the hours of 7 till 10 so we can do the street sweeper.
Same thing that happens in residential areas like East Marysville. If the car's there, they don't clean it.
But
It's how it happens.
Yeah, but this is D Street. This is of the eye of the city.
Well,
and now you're going to
Public Works will have to blow from out underneath the car.
I can tell you how other communities deal with that have similar areas to the downtown. They require on-street parking, whether they're residents or businesses, do not park there on that day. And they put up signs that say, street sweeping on this day, no parking. And if people park there, they get tickets.
Yeah. No, I just came from San Diego. And
Yeah.
That's what they were
That's
doing
how they
for them.
handle it.
It was like,
Yeah.
oh my God. And you had visions of Marysville going, holy crap, you're going to get all these people tickets?
Yeah.
I mean, good revenue for law enforcement, but are you going to have a happy resident or?
Well, just, and I'll throw my 2 cents in. We are talking about trying to develop housing for residents that aren't here. Yeah. That's what this discussion is about. So I assume that if the developer builds a multi-unit residence, and somebody moves in, we may have some that say, hey, well, gee, why doesn't the developer, the owner of the property, have parking for me? I would hope they'd ask that question before they move in and not afterwards. I mean, it's kind of a buyer beware, but this is a situation that exists in many other communities throughout the world at this point. Some people are okay with not having off-street parking for their vehicle. If the developer can't get people to move in because there's no parking, I guess we haven't solved the problem. If we're looking to protect the residents that are downtown already, there aren't that many of them. And we're not, I mean, there are people down there that are not struggling with parking. So, my goal is to get more people downtown living in those vacant
Before we
buildings.
continue, we do have a comment from the public in a public hearing. If we can hear from them.
Mr. Langdell, I believe you are able to speak.
On his end.
It appears that you are muted, Mr. Langdell. Can you unmute on your end, please?
Yeah, I have no specific
I didn't catch that. I'm sorry. That the chair what? Perfect.
I just wanted to make sure that the chair. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that the chair called for public comment in case there was someone either on Zoom or otherwise in the audience that wanted to speak. I did not hear that at the noise ordinance public hearing. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else for public comment out there? I know there's nobody in the room, but is there anyone else on Zoom or anything?
There is no one else.
Trying. No, I'm not muted.
Yes, Ted, did you want to comment on our previous public hearing on the noise ordinance? Mr. Langdell, if you still have us here, if you want to, we can still have you comment.
I'm hearing myself coming back on the live stream. Thank you, and I appreciate the fact that you're able to do that.
Yes. Okay, anything you'd like to say about the previous public hearing on the noise ordinance? Go ahead and tell us what you'd like to say.
He had no further comments.
Oh yeah, I thought he was saying thank you to the opportunity to do it. Okay. All right, sorry. I'm lost. All right, we can continue with our debate here on this topic.
And I don't profess to have a perfect solution here. What I will just speak to the commission on is we need to have some solution, a balanced solution, and we need to move forward with it and not deliberate it to death so that we can start moving these telling the developers how they can move forward.
Well, I think that was what we did last meeting is we put out two credible options to be able to approve here, and it's going to basically be one or the other. And to be honest with you, they're not very far apart anyway. I don't think either one of them is a terrible idea. So with that being said, any other comments before? Well. Which are already excluded from this. That's why they're just that downtown area. So the thought of anything being built there that is anything more than, what, probably 20. Oh.
But B is included, is it not?
It is, but not that far down. It stops at 9th. So
But that's still.
B that is King Clothing and the laundromat. And,
No, I know that.
Oh,
but
okay.
C going down to 9th has residences down there.
Yes, they do. I just don't think there's space for anything more than 15 to 20 units at most in those areas. But again,
Well,
I understand
even
what you,
15 or 20
Yeah.
is.
I understand
So
what you're saying.
Yeah, that's my preference.
Mm-hmm. Comments from else? I guess it's a question to staff is if we can't approve one, what do we do?
Well, we don't have to have a unanimous vote.
It's not a unanimous?
No.
Okay. What is it, just majority? Okay. So I guess, yeah, another. So I need to close public comments at this time, is that? Okay. Okay, I'm closing the public hearing at this time. And is that what, Christina, is that what you were? I know, I'm very confused. Yes.
I have another question for you guys.
Good.
Do you see how many 10 units are you currently looking at? Just, I know it's nothing specific, I understand, but the interest, how many developers are looking at building 10 or more units? Approximately. You don't have to have an exact number by any means, but just to get an idea.
I wish Dan were here, but I am aware of two viable or two fairly solid parties that are interested, and that is the Marysville Hotel and the 30 some odd unit on 3rd and D. Those are the only two that I have seen that are over 10 units.
Thank you for that clarification. That's what I thought. But
There are vacant lots, though, that could be developed.
what about the one on 3rd and D?
Probably two, yeah.
Third and D is the one that I think is roughly 30 some.
And that's just still pending out there?
Yeah, he's probably waiting for us to decide what to do here.
Okay, thank you. That's what I figured.
And, sorry, one more. How many units was that on 3rd and D? 36? Okay. So we'd be asking for 18 parking spaces off-site or on-site on a 36 unit if we went with measured or option number 2. It's still not covering.
How many stories is that approximately? I know it's not in stone, but just asking.
I think it's 4.
Thank you.
So I guess
I'm thinking as much about residents living in the area of these projects as developers.
I would agree with that too, but at the presentation they gave us and the amount of excess parking that we do already have in the downtown area.
And in some areas, that's true.
And if we have 2 projects proposed that are a grand sum of 50 something odd homes, and we have an extra 200 and something spaces in downtown, the ones proposed immediately don't seem to propose too big a concern.
Yeah, those opposed, but that doesn't mean that there won't be.
And kind of just to help with to see where we're going to move forward with this thing is that I'm leaning towards alternate 2. So
I'm basically willing to proceed with the recommended action, which was to get rid of parking code altogether, or not parking code, but minimums. Yeah, alternate 1. Motion to approve alternate 1 from the proposed plan. All ayes? Oh, it's a vote at this point? Okay. Oh. Yes.
Roll call vote.
All right, I'm going to take a roll call. Commissioner Vaden,
No.
Commissioner Langsdorf, Commissioner Bramer,
no.
Vice Chair Rollins, and Chair Mesher.
Yes.
Or I don't. Our bylaws say 4, so we probably need to table this.
Table it until next meeting for a vote. Well, that was a good catch then. So, yeah. We'll have to table it till next meeting to get it approved then. We don't have a minimum vote required. Yeah, will we need to have a special meeting to do this, or can we just do it at our next month's meeting? It's that we need a minimum of 4 votes, even though the only 2 we're going to add are for. No, they just said that we can continue in a month from now. Okay, so we will table that vote until next month's meeting. Oh,
Here's my concern. Council would not then hear it until September, one way or another, and we're delaying it even further. I would prefer if we can somehow do a special meeting sooner to do it.
I'm willing. Do you want to call for that meeting later on at a different time as for the date?
Typically when we do council, we poll everybody and see what's an acceptable time.
Okay, perfect. So we'll table that until an approved meeting date.
So our staff will reach out to you guys and do the fun stuff of trying to schedule 7 people.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So I guess that moves us on, correct? Okay, to item number 7, training workshop presented by planning consultant Kathy Pease on AICP. Yeah, only just a small amount at the workshop that I attended my first year.
The 3 of them.
Uh-huh.
I think, for Ben and I think the city attorney actually mentioned to us at one point.
The workshop you're mentioning is the one that we went out of town to the area for.
Yes, Santa Rosa, I believe.
So we will be bringing forward, probably the city attorney will give more formal Brown Act training, but I just wanted to put that out there and find out how much, you guys have had training to this point. So I think going forward, Dan would be interested in having a section of your planning commission meetings be for training. So if there are things that you guys want training on, let us know and we'll schedule. One thing I wanted to touch on tonight was just best practices for planning commission meetings. I think you all are aware of this, but it's always good to have a reminder. Every voice matters. Everyone is encouraged to participate. There aren't folks here tonight, but there may be folks that come that aren't familiar with the city, aren't familiar with planning jargon. So we need to remember not to use acronyms or things that folks won't understand. Like we've had tonight, differing views, it's a discussion. We want to listen with an open mind, respect other people's viewpoints. Remember, everyone, the commission and the public, are volunteering their time to participate. And so we appreciate that and want to keep that in mind. As we found tonight, the goal is general consensus. It's okay to disagree respectfully and openly, and can move things forward even if it's not unanimous. And then again, don't really have that problem with this commission, but respect groups' time, keep comments brief and to the point. Just a general overview of best practices.
Okay, thank you.
I do. I want to just so everybody understands. We're talking about Brown Act training, not because we see a problem.
Not because we've been debating the last couple of meetings. That's why I'm looking at it going, God.
Here's how it typically works that, or things happen related to the Brown Act is something happens because the training didn't occur, and then it gets kind of messy. So we'd rather let you guys know what's going on first, so you maybe we don't fall into that trap.
Just a side note, I'm not sure if I should bring it up now or later, but in our agenda, can we add comments from the public on there so it doesn't get missed? Or is that?
It's actually part of public hearing, and I'm supposed to
Okay.
be the one to remember that and not miss that. So
Gotcha, okay.
that's on me, and it
Right,
won't
no,
need to be.
'cause
I'll get it next time. Oh, you mean in general when it's not a public hearing? Yeah. Agree.
What was that? I'm sorry.
That if it's on there in general anyway, to
Yeah.
where if there are any members of the public that want to speak during a normal meeting, even if it's not a public hearing, if we can add that to the staff's.
And do you, as chair, have kind of an annotated version? Provide that as well to make.
For how to conduct the public hearings,
Yeah.
I have a binder this big,
Okay.
and I know that it's needed, and I've read through it, and I missed that today. So
No, there might be something we can put in yours that says member public.
as much as you can, anything that you see fit to put in there, definitely, I don't mind reading it. So as much as you can, yes. So I guess is that the end of the workshop? I'm sorry.
Yes, it was brief.
Okay. That brings us to number 8, which is commissioners' comments. Any other comments from the commission?
Basically, just like I think city staff, law enforcement, and all the fire agencies that helped out with the ice house fire last week.
And I just want to reiterate, thank you guys. You guys really do a great job covering everything, so appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd like to mirror almost right down the board, and we did have a pretty significant fire in town this weekend, and that was quite impressive. I can't believe they got there so fast. It was really great to see everyone out, and it was impressive. So
I'm just going to tell you guys thank you too, and continue to do the greatest job that you're doing. Appreciate your time.
We appreciate all you too.
I will echo what everybody says, and I think this is the first time I've ever been on the short end of the split vote in
well,
5 years.
hasn't been decided. So
No, that's true.
Yeah, you still have hope.
okay. I guess if that is it, we're on to item number 9, which is staff updates. If we have any of those.
First off, thank you guys for your patience with me as I learn how to be a clerk very shortly. So we just have a few updates on some developments in town. We have a new Indian restaurant that's coming in near Lake Ellis, and so once that opens, we're all going to be very excited to try their food. There's also going to be a new bakery opening in downtown, and again, we're excited to get out there and try that food. Progress continues with all of the developments that were mentioned today, and so hopefully sooner than later we'll have new exciting developments to bring for you guys to review. And also slowly the SACOG gave us a grant for new wayfinding signs, and we are having those put up. Right now, if you want to go check them out, 2 new wayfinding signs have been put up, one on the corner of 3rd and B Street, and one in the public parking area around 1st and C Street. So you'll see the old wayfinding signs were a blue and a red, and the new ones are beige. And so those were provided through a grant from SACOG, and we're very excited about that. And so you'll start to see the new ones come up.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And that's all I have, Ms. Pease.
Some related information. If you had not watched council last meeting, we did recommend, and it was approved, to do significant amount of paving in East Marysville primarily. Some on the west side, but the primary in East Marysville. We also have mode shift grant from SACOG that will be doing some pilot traffic calming in the area between 10th and 14th and B Street through H. Temporary roundabouts, some other traffic controls, radar feedback signs. And this is a temporary pilot to see how effective it is. If it is, then we'll likely move forward with some grants, proposals to do something permanent. There's also a community development or community design grant from SACOG that we received for $250,000. That is to do some enhancements on D Street to make it more attractive and walkable. Likely we'll be potentially looking at temporary bollards that can be installed between 3rd and 4th or 3rd and 5th, so that if we have an event, we can block the street off. Looking at some enhanced lighting as well to make it more attractive and safe at night. That will all be, we will be getting significant input from the downtown community, particularly the Marysville Business Alliance, before we move forward with the actual changes. So exactly what we're doing there has not been decided. We did want to get business participation before that. Those are the big ticket items from the last council meeting. There's still quite a bit going on. That's it.
Do you have an update on the East Lake, the apartments?
Oh, I'll turn that over to.
I'm trying to get a kid out of my
Assistant
house, so I want to know
So-
the status.
We have, currently they're operating under a temporary certificate of occupancy, and we are in the process of issuing them their final certificate of occupancy, and actually we hope to have that done tomorrow, and residents will start to move in. We have not had that yet. We were waiting, there was a few more hiccups we were working through with them last week, so.
I actually have two more parks related. So Gavin Park in East Marysville is, you'll see fencing around it because we are putting in a new play structure and revamping the playground area there. And then Ellis Lake, council approved use of some Yuba Water Agency funding that was left over from our last effort on Ellis Lake to look at the feasibility and cost of improving the water quality. And really the big push is to look at whether we can bring water in from the Yuba River, fresh water, and exit it through Jack Slough. So
Which is the only way to keep Ellis Lake clean, yes.
we have hired a consultant to do that, and, Willie Whittlesey at the Water Agency has said to me more times than I can count that we really need to understand the cost to do that. So the consultant we're hiring is looking at both the regulatory requirements to do that, because there's tons of agencies involved, as well as working with our city engineer, John Mallon at MHM, to try and develop fairly accurate cost for what it would take to do that. So you may see some people around the lake, hard hats or orange vests, and that's probably our concern.
Yeah. Out of all the time I've been here, this is the
Yuba-Sutter.live's
first
local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self Storage
about the
in
lake
Plumas
that
Lake,
I've really heard, and
where
just love
lifelong
to hear
local
that. That's,
residents are helping
in
other
my opinion, one
residents
of the
keep
biggest
things
things in this
safe, providing
entire city, and I good progress on that is just feels good. So
And also, it was great to hear that off the park or whatever, and that the Rosalini is moving forward with that. I like the page, and I'm going to try to attend the first meeting.
any other comments or questions? No more updates? Then adjournment. Meeting adjourned.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.